All right. Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Market Trading. I'm your host, Tone Vays, and wow, Zoom actually did it right for me this time. No shit. Awesome. Okay. We're in business. Move the window over. All right. Now, if everyone's doing good, Bitcoin pulled back a smidge. So let's go and look at the charts. I'm probably going to join in Swan's Cafe Bitcoin Spaces once again. So let's see if we can get this video done by the top of the hour. Man, people have been asking me about Russia, Ukraine, and other geopolitical stuff. I've kind of stayed away from it for the last few weeks. With unconfiscatable just a few weeks away, I don't know if I should bring up that can of worms on what's going on in geopolitics. But man, once unconfiscatable ends, holy shit, all gloves are off. Okay, here we go. Long-term view. Bitcoin is doing pretty damn well. I really thought that. So we're sitting at the bottom of the range had we gone up to 60,000 earlier this year, but that didn't happen. So now we're pretty much at the top of the range. Either way, I'm expecting us to be at approximately $37,000 at the halving. Actually, I'm really curious where we are in the with time to halving. Time to halving. Let's see. I still think it'll be in March. Like with the amount of hash power coming online is crazy, but I'm also surprised how congested the Bitcoin mempool is. So let's see what's going on here. So we are still scheduled for April. Still scheduled for April. Okay. There is a Bitcoin halving party down in El Salvador. Once Unconfiscatable ends, I'm gonna follow up with those guys, and hopefully there's still a room for me over there. I'd like to go back to El Salvador. Haven't been there in a while. It would have been 2 years since I've been to El Salvador by the time the halving rolls around. I was there, I think, January or February of 22. Man, I can't believe 2024 is almost here. Jeez. Okay, where are we here? Weekly scale. Weekly scale is pulling back off of the MRI top. We're looking for a 1 to 4 candle correction, and then we reevaluate the situation. So far, we are dealing with the first candle of the correction. Jimmy G, thanks for joining me on the live stream, brother. Hope everything's well with Rancho San Satoshi that you're building down there in Mexico. Yeah, let's see how massive this pullback is. We're keeping an eye on it. This is the 4-day chart. We were pulling back. We fell below 35,000. I stated very clearly on yesterday's live stream and the live stream before that 35,000 is almost guaranteed. I thought it would go a little bit lower, but let's see what happens next. Let's read some news. How about that? I have two. Yeah, I don't need both of these. Hopefully it's not my DMs again. It's not. Okay, good. It is. Great. but at least it wasn't like the detailed message version of it. It's just who I'm actually chatting with, which is better. Okay, so this was market news from yesterday, or like 2 days ago now. I'm going to go ahead and read through this because I've been a little bit out of touch with what's going on in the markets. So let's see what's going on in macro. Market volatility resulted in gains and losses of over 100 million in the past 24 hours. JPY nearing 33-year low against the US dollar. That's interesting. We should go and take a look at the JPY currency. Oil heads for its third consecutive weekly loss. I think that's not gonna happen this week. I think it's gonna rally to the upside. About 70% of household wealth in China tied to real estate sector. U.S. markets, the Dow Jones Industrials on a verge of experiencing a death cross. I'm not too scared about that. Moody's has revised the U.S. credit outlook from stable to negative. Yeah, no shit. BitHub is making preparations for an IPO. Really? How does... Oh, what? BitHub? What's BitHub? Oh, BitDumb, sorry. I still don't know what that is. I'm curious what that company is. You know my rule on IPOs, 50% corrections. The current US yield curve inversion reached its significant levels in over 40 years. This is a very interesting thing, right? Remember, the US yield curve has been inverted for what feels like 3 years now, okay? And everyone is like, oh, the yield curve's inverted, here comes a recession, right? But the yield curve can stay inverted for like 19 years, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to wait for a recession until the yield curve uninverts? This is why, depending on a yield curve inversion for your market analysis is very misguided. The yield curve is still inverted and is becoming more inverted. So when is the recession actually coming? This is why I never really cared all that much about a yield curve inversion. The largest US options exchange is set to introduce margined Bitcoin and Ethereum futures. Interesting. Okay. So don't they already have futures? I don't think this is going to make any difference at all. Crypto markets, cryptocurrency markets have been substantially increased this 100 billion in market capitalization. That's great. The SEC has until November 17th to consider the potentially approved Bitcoin spot ETF. You guys know my view. They're going to come up with another excuse. Instances of spikes in Bitcoin transaction fees are occurring more frequently. Yep, we're aware of that as well. Now, let's go to the Financial Summit Twitter handle. Let's see if we have some news coming up more recently. We do put out these longer threads on markets. You guys really want to follow the Financial Summit Twitter handle for all kinds of research. All right, let's read one more news. Like I said, I've been a little bit out of touch with the news. NVIDIA experienced gains for 9 consecutive trading days. I've been bullish on, well, actually, no, I'm not going to say I've been bullish on NVIDIA. We have to go look at the chart. So NVIDIA chart and JPY chart we need to take a look at. Hedge funds currently hold the largest short position in oil since July. Beautiful. I am very bullish on oil now. Derivative trading volume has increased by 44% month over month. Interesting. Not sure why. CPI data comes in at 3.2 versus the estimated 3.3. That helped rally the markets quite a bit. The equity put call ratio reached 1.18 last Wednesday. I'm not exactly sure what that metric means. Is that good or bad? I would need to review my put call ratio. I'm not a put call ratio trader. That was never really my major metric. Remember, guys, there are infinite amount of metrics you can use in your trading. Chinese holdings of U.S. Treasuries officially reached the lowest level since 2009. Yeah, that's, again, I've been on this train for a decade now. I've been on this train that the foreign governments are going to stay away from the United States debt. This is why the interest rate is not going to go any lower. I know there are people that think that the interest rate will drop. It will not. Why would the interest rate drop? No one wants American shitty government debt. The Chinese don't even want them, for God's sake, and they want everything. Presently, 80% of Bitcoin addresses in profitable position. Wow, that's impressive. I didn't think that. I would not have expected that. Transaction fees on Bitcoin network reached their highest levels. That's a rough statement. I have to talk to the team. They can be at their highest levels. I remember $100 transaction fees in 2017. So I got to be more specific on that. Likelihood of Bitcoin ETF approval higher in January. I agree. I don't think it's going to get approved this month. All right, we caught up on our news. Let's go back to the charts. What about that allocation? Well, that allocation will go to 100% if next candle breaches current candle. Otherwise, we're waiting for a pullback. This rebound off the lows is actually very, very bullish. It's a very, very bullish pullback off the lows, but it is a red star candle. Until current candle breaks, I can actually lower this. I don't really need it to break the tops. I would be perfectly happy with the break of yesterday's swing high. Yesterday was a very nasty candle. It was a red star candle. It crashed us to 35,000. If the price of Bitcoin can get above yesterday's high, I believe we're going to go to 40 and beyond. But everything depends on what the SEC is going to say. Tone, are there good road trips from Panama City to Nicaragua to Costa Rica? I have not done that road trip. I'm a little scared to do that road trip because I don't speak Spanish. If I spoke Spanish, I would be perfectly comfortable with that road trip. Panama is not a dangerous country. Nicaragua is not that dangerous anymore. Costa Rica, I'm actually more worried about Costa Rica than I am about Nicaragua and the outskirts. But you can do that road trip. But if you don't speak Spanish, I would advise against that road trip. What moving averages am I using exactly? Well, it depends on the chart. This is the daily chart. On the daily chart, I use the 50 period, the 128-day period, and the 200 period. The 128-day period is my favorite moving average as a standalone moving average. It does a very good job. The way it kind of broke down over here in June is rare. The 128-day moving average has consistently been one of the best moving averages. You can look, see how it perfectly bounced the price. This was a pretty good rejection back in October of 22. The most perfect rebound. Yes, the 200 did it as well in March of 23. But if you go back historically, the 128-day is one of my absolute favorite moving averages to use. And the 50 and the 200 are just the classics. On the 4-day chart, I use the 3 period, the 9 period, and the 30 period. This is Tyler Jenks's weekly Consensio model, but applied to Bitcoin, which is a 24/7 trading day market. And on a weekly scale, I use the 20, 50, 200, the classic simple moving averages. So back to the daily chart. The daily chart is probably the key chart right now. And I am expecting us to have a bigger pullback. I am expecting the SEC to disappoint and the market to drop down to the 50 period moving average, currently sitting at $32,000. Oh, I did not even realize that the 4-day chart, the 4-hour chart, absolutely perfectly bounced off of my horizontal channel that I had drawn back in late October. What a perfect support off of that. Now, had I been a day trader and been paying attention instead of organizing conferences, this would have been a nice short-term buying opportunity. If you drop this down to a 1-hour scale, I wonder if there's an MRI component here. Let's wait and see. There was not, unfortunately, but what a beautiful touch of that line. I did not mess with this horizontal channel. It has been here for 2 weeks probably. And the hourly did have an MRI top. And now we're pulling back a smidge. I see some of my moderators have sent in a few questions. Can you do a great short trade if you're so confident in the ETF denial? I don't like to short Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is in a bullish trend. So shorting Bitcoin right now would not be a wise decision. I am confident in the ETF denial, but I would not short Bitcoin uh, in this environment. Can you please tell exactly what? Oh yeah, I did that already. Okay, yeah, we'll get to a couple of stocks. AVGO, I need to look at. GBTC discount. The moment Bitcoin rallies one more time, expect the GBTC discount to be less than 10%. GBTC has been probably one of the best trades this entire year, and it still has another 10% to catch up to par. I believe that it will catch up to par. Natural gas, I'm expecting to go up, even though I'm hearing the winter in Europe is not that bad yet. Oil prices dropped once again today. This is the weekly chart. I am expecting oil prices to start to rise a little bit. Gold, I think gold has pulled back and is now ready to challenge the all-time high. I would be bullish on gold. The S&P, let's see how the S&P is progressing today. The S&P continues to rise. I remain bullish on the S&P. I've been bullish on the S&P. This is a very short-term look. Let's look at the daily chart. Another update for the S&P. What a surprise, right? What a surprise. S&P, incredible trade. Off the MRI buy on the daily, on the last days of October. It's things like this that make me really want to quit everything and go back to trading. I hope you guys caught this because I've been talking about it all month. I was in the middle of the summit, so I didn't take the trade, but I hope other people took the trade. The dollar is still dropping. I remain bullish on the dollar going forward. As weird as it sounds, I cannot be more bearish on America. I'm bearish on America to the point where I'm so close to just surrendering the passport, but I am waiting for the election. I am waiting for the US election. I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet. It really depends who's on the ballot. It is possible I'll vote for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It's possible. I may vote for them. It depends who the other candidates are. Like, if there's no good candidate, you might as well vote for the worst candidate and just bring on the collapse sooner and just take everybody out of their misery. Whoever I vote for, I'm going to take a picture and I'm going to tweet it out. Maybe Hillary will be back in the race. Like, just vote for the worst possible person to just, rip this Band-Aid off. If Kathy Wood said Gary Gensler wants to be the Treasury Secretary, she definitely watches this channel because I've said this already. I said the only way Gary Gensler approves a Bitcoin ETF or something else that the government wants him to do, it's with a bribe that he becomes the next Fed chair. Not Fed chair, sorry, Treasury Secretary. I'll vote for Zelensky. How about that? I'll write in Zelensky. Okay. Let's look at a few stocks. Or Trudeau. Trudeau would be perfect. Should bring him to America. Let's get Castro's son in there. By the way, for the person that asked about the route from Panama through Nicaragua and Costa Rica, the best way to travel, you want to get on one of those buses that, drives up migrants that cross the Darien Gap. Just get on one of those buses, man. They have Wi-Fi, they have air conditioning. They should just get on one of those buses. They'll take you right to the Mexican border, man. It's like you like travel in style. Get on those migrant buses, man. The U.S. is paid for it. Might as well take advantage. Right from Panama, straight to the border, man. No, I wouldn't vote for Newsom, though. No. Newsom would actually just prolong the misery. Newsom is actually a pretty damn good candidate for the Democrats. Like Newsom is not as crazy as Biden or Kamala, or like Newsom would actually be the worst vote. Newsom would be like another Clinton. Or Obama. Like I don't want that. Like I don't want another Obama or Clinton. Well, like if I'm voting for a communist, it better be like a Lenin or a Stalin, right? Otherwise, I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna try to actually save the country. By the way, if I am voting for Biden, I'm getting the hell out of here. It's your problem, guys. Thanks, Steve. I don't know what bald and bankrupt is. All right. What are we doing? Oh, currencies. Let's look at the JPY. Well, the dollar has been dropping a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be affecting JPY much. I believe the Japanese currency is going to devalue greatly, but the Japanese society will be perfectly fine. Japanese is one of those societies that can handle adversity. They just live in their own island bubble. Well, technically, I'll be in Panama in 2 days, so I try to spend very little time in the U.S. What about Nikki Haley? No. See, Nikki Haley is a Republican, right? Like, if I'm going to vote for a Republican, I'm going to vote for a good Republican, not a bad Republican. I've been on the Republican bandwagon, right? Like, I can't have a Republican starting World War III. If anyone's going to start World War III, it needs to be a Marxist Democrat. If a Republican causes it, that's kind of bad. Thank God McCain was never president. Okay, the other currency is Russian ruble. See, the Russian ruble is appreciating. What have I taught you guys? This massive appreciation in the Russian ruble is an indication of what is going on with the military on the ground. On the ground, Russia has been struggling on the ground the entire year of 2023. Okay, the entire 2023, Russia has struggled uh, in the Ukrainian offensive. But right now, Russia is doing pretty well. I'm still surprised how well Ukraine's doing on the battlefield. I really, really am. Uh, as I stated a while ago, I thought that most of those analysts were a little bit too optimistic on Russia. McGregor, Scott Ritter, uh, even the Duran, and I talked about their bias in Russia's ability to be more dominant on the battlefield. Brian Beletic, we had this discussion here like a month and a half ago or something, and I explained that where they're falling short and why they're grossly overestimating Russia's abilities on the ground. And it looks like I've been right. Russia is still struggling on the ground, but there is a big battle going on right now that Russia is about to capture massive amounts of territory. But they're still struggling in many other parts. So everything, all my criticism of those channels over the last 2 months or so have been proven correct. That Russia has struggled quite a bit, and statements by Scott Ritter and McGregor that Ukraine would collapse by the end of the summer. I mean, clearly those statements were not accurate. Ukraine has been a lot more resilient than those guys anticipated. I anticipated that as well, and I explained my reasons why. Now, I still think Ukraine is in a lot of trouble, and Russia is going to eventually take half that country. But it's not going to be easy, and it hasn't been easy. Danish, hope everything is well over in Russia for you. I know it could be a struggle. I've met so many Russians in the UAE. 3 million Russians have left Russia for Dubai and Abu Dhabi. That is incredible. That is a massive amount of people. This is the part that is hurting Russia the most, the brain drain. All the successful, wealthy Russians went to places like Dubai, and the less financially secure Russians ended up in like Thailand and Kazakhstan and some of the other countries. Okay, now what about the Ukrainian currency? Well, the Ukrainian currency is going to hit hyperinflation. The United States government continues to pay every single Ukrainian government employee, and eventually that check is going to bounce. And when it bounces, this thing can go exponential, and the Ukrainian currency will just collapse. I still think that's going to happen. When the Russian ruble breaks parity with the Ukrainian currency, right here, this is parity between Ukrainian currency and the Russian currency. That spells complete and utter disaster for Ukraine. I'm not going to get into the details into why, but this metric is incredibly important. Oh yeah, no. Phuket is like I think there's more Russians in Phuket than there are Thais at this point. A lot of Russians fled. It's Russia's biggest problem. Russia's biggest problem is the brain drain of people leaving. And Russia needs to do everything in their power to bring Russians back to Russia. The Israeli Russians are probably coming back to Russia because they're probably scared to stay in Israel. But Russia needs to find a way to bring their people back, like voluntarily, right? Not like what Ukraine's doing, getting the European countries to arrest them and send them back to Ukraine. Russia needs to find a way to convince the Russians that left Russia to come back to Russia. Because that's a lot of brain drain. That's a lot of wealth. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of people. Russia already has a very negative birth rate. So the Russian government needs to try and do everything they can to convince the Russian people to come back to Russia. And obviously, the war in Ukraine needs to complete. And then Russia needs to be a lot more capitalistic. How do you convince a Russian to come back to Russia? You need to give them the opportunity to have a job, to have a business, to have security, to have freedom. So this is why I think 10 years from now, Russia might be a decent place. If they want their people back, they would have to open their country to some of the freedoms that made people go to America. Like the reason why people want to come to America or America doesn't have to convince Americans to come back to America. Americans aren't fleeing America expecting to be back due to political changes and making America better. Maybe if Trump gets in and then RFK Jr. gets in and then maybe somebody else, like I don't know, there's a couple of senators, Matt Gaetz is one of them, and Massey. There's a few libertarian candidates, but the goal of a country, especially a country whose people are fleeing, that actually wants those people back, like Cuba doesn't care that their people come back. Like North Korea ain't gonna change policies to get North Koreans back to North Korea, but a country like Russia can alter its policies to try and convince Russians to come back. It's very possible, very possible, but they have to, create an environment that makes them want to come back. Step one is the situation in Ukraine needs to come to a conclusion. Okay, let's look at that stock someone asked for, AVGO. Broadcom. I'm not familiar with Broadcom, but it's been around a while. I'm kind of familiar with Broadcom. I'm not familiar with the stock of Broadcom. And they've been doing really well. I'm surprised this has never really been on my radar. Whatever this company is doing, they have been absolutely excellent at it. This is how you run a company. It fell in COVID like everything else, but look how far it rallied. It's at a new all-time high. I cannot be more bullish on Broadcom from a TA perspective. It has just broken out above its consolidated top where it reached over earlier this year. This is a beautiful breakout. The weekly chart still has room to the upside. The monthly chart has gone through a 1 to 4 candle correction and is now rallying. Next month would be a green star candle. So next month, this becomes bullish on the MRI monthly. It is currently a bullish MRI weekly, but a top is coming around earnings. So if we rally into earnings, expect a pullback back to maybe 950 or so, maybe even 900. And the daily, probably near an MRI top. No, the daily had an MRI top. It is now on a green star candle. So this asset is bullish on the daily, bullish on the weekly, and currently neutral on the monthly, but will be bullish on monthly if it keeps rising into next month. Okay, anything else I need to look at? I mean, look, if you're in Germany and you have a German passport, you don't really need another passport, but a backup passport would be nice. I mean, look, I don't know where Europe's headed. European passports are still pretty good, but man, London, what an insanity in London. I don't know if I want to open up the can of worms of Palestine versus Israel. That's a whole other disaster. But I'm perfectly okay opening this can of worms of Russia, Ukraine. So at the moment, Ukraine's advantage remains over in this area, but it'll probably end in the near future. How do I get rid of this thing? No. Okay. So the big Ukrainian offensive has taken this part of the land, and they are going to lose it eventually. But the issue is One second. One second, yes. One second. One second, guys. All right. The real situation is right here in Avdiivka. This is huge, okay? Ukraine is stuck in this cauldron right here. And Russia is closing in from this direction. And how do I end this? And from this direction. That's the problem. Okay? That's the problem. And the goal for Russia. Okay. Okay. The goal for Russia is to shorten the front line like this. And this is a super important area for Russia to close. Because by closing this area, they protect Donetsk. Donetsk has been shelled like crazy for a decade now. And it hasn't been shelled in a while because Russia finally prevented Ukraine from having lots of weapons in this area. So the problem for Ukraine right here on the edge is that they no longer can have artillery here firing at Donetsk. They needed to move their artillery here. And now this artillery is protecting these people. But now that the walls are closing in, this is a problem. Now, I have stated over a year ago that this should be Russia's number one priority in this military conflict right here. And once they take this area, and they're close to taking this area, they'll probably need another month or two. Once this collapses, that's a huge problem for the Ukrainian government, okay? I mean, they will probably keep it out of the news cycle because no one cares about Russia-Ukraine anymore. It's all about Israel now. So when this falls, that's a massive victory for Russia. But Russia is still struggling greatly. But this is the big battle right now. This is the exact same battle as Russia had to deal with in, what was that other city? Shoot. It was right here, Bakhmut. It's no different than the Bakhmut situation. Now, once that is resolved, Russia will be able to spread their troops a little bit around. Also notice, once again, Russia is struggling. They can't implement a draft. It's hard for them to bring more people into the military. So this is why Russia is struggling quite a bit here. But Ukraine can't last forever either. And eventually the United States government will not be able to financially support Ukraine. And it depends on who gets in to be president. If it's Trump or RFK or Vivek, I'm not that high on. So I don't know who's going to be president. But it depends what their focus is with the Israel situation versus the Ukraine situation. Where's Gonzalo Lira? Probably in prison. You think he's dead? I don't think he's dead. Tone is now a military advisor. Well, I've spent more time paying attention to this than I have to Bitcoin the last 2 years. So if you're asking me for Bitcoin advice the last 2 years, it's probably a lot less accurate than my advice on this, right? It depends on what you are spending your time on learning. Trust me, I've paid a lot more attention to the Russia-Ukraine situation than anything that's happened in Bitcoin. Anyone that's asking me on my opinion on, I don't know, what do you call them, drive chains, for example, it's a lot dumber opinion than what's happening in Russia-Ukraine. Just because I spent the prior 8 years following everything in Bitcoin doesn't mean I spent the last 2 years following everything in Bitcoin. So my knowledge of what's going on in this here is, I feel, a lot greater than my knowledge of Bitcoin or Lightning Network. I don't even use Lightning. Like, you should never, trust a person's views on their cumulative knowledge of a subject. Sometimes the most recent knowledge of a subject is a lot more important than a person's cumulative knowledge of the subject. Like any idiot that's going to Warren Buffett asking him about Bitcoin, it's no different than that, right? There will come a point where asking me about Bitcoin makes no sense because that's not where I pay attention to anymore. Yeah, this is why I don't want Nikki Haley to be president. If the United States is gonna, be in a full-blown war where bombs are raining down on New York City and Washington, I'd rather it come from someone else than her, right? So she's my last vote. She's an absolute horrendous human being. T. Nick, by your logic, no one is an expert at anything, right? If you're not an expert in what you knew and you're not an expert at what you're learning, then no one is an expert in anything, right? I'm not saying I'm an expert at Russia-Ukraine. I'm just saying my opinion and my views on Russia-Ukraine are a lot more up to date than my knowledge of, say, the Bitcoin's Lightning Network. This is what you should be watching. This is the most important thing that's happening right now in the Russia-Ukraine conflict of Avdiivka. And I've been talking about Avdiivka for a year and a half. I'm not an expert at all. I don't know if anyone is an expert at this. But I'm just saying that half my day is spent following geopolitics and not what's happening in the Bitcoin realm. It's actually amazing why people still ask me for my opinion on anything in Bitcoin. This is why we do the conference, so I can sit there and learn from experts on stage. Speaking of the conference, come join us at Unconfiscatable, an incredible event where you do get to learn from the experts. Yes, you get to meet me and hang out with me, but you're learning from them. I'm going to be moderating. I'm going to be asking them questions on what's going on. I still have the capacity to ask good questions. All right, it's 11 a.m. Eastern time. I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna join Swan Spaces and hang out and learn from some experts. Feel free to join me there. Bitfarms is pumping, really? That's cool. There's a high probability Bitfarms will come and join us at Unconfiscatable. Let me see. Yeah, the daily chart's looking great. Really good. Good job on Bitfarms. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching and see you all on the next one. Bye, guys.